Hey folks, today's episode is a dual purpose recording, and this is for both my good friend Tim Anderson's Original Strength Bodcast, and of course my Taking the Lid Off podcast. And we had both wanted to be on each other's shows, so we decided why not do one that we both use. And Tim is someone, he's a good friend, known him for a long time, and he's been important in my life. So you're likely going to hear from him again on this show. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I encourage you to go over and check out Original Strength and all that it has to offer. On to the show.
Hey guys, and thanks for tuning in to the Original Strength Podcast. We got a very special 2-for-1 special today. I'm with my good friend Chad Faulkner, and he is also recording his podcast called
Yes, folks, Taking the Lid Off is the name of my podcast, so we'll be recording for me as well.
So Chad and I are good friends, and we've known each other for a while. We even wrote a book together called Original Strength for the Tactical Athlete. And Chad has just started his podcast too, called Taking the Lid Off. Chad, where do you want to start with this, man? Do you want to talk about what Taking the Lid Off is? Talk about Tactical Athlete. Talk about us.
So let's go back and forth here. So I'll mention Taking the Lid Off, and for your listeners, Taking the Lid Off is my brand new podcast venture that I'm going into to speak to things like leadership and veteran issues. I'm a retired Army vet, 20 years in the military, and all that. So kind of capitalizing on that and bringing my leadership experience, talking about veteran issues and things like that, and trying to kind of focus as well on veteran transition, and then fitness as well. And the way fitness ties into what I want for my podcast is career guys, veterans, as they get out. There's some statistics that I need to gather up that show guys get out of the military. They've got this good fitness program for their 20 years or however long in the military. They get out and they don't always continue it. And there's actually a high obesity rate among career veterans. And so I'm hoping things like Original Strength and all, showing folks some good programs out there, we can maybe bring something to the veteran community that they can use to or stay in shape that is also very good for you but low impact.
Right on. So when veterans get out, and you said there's a higher incidence of obesity and things like that because they're not moving anymore. Um, it's almost like, you ever hear the freshman 15 when people go to college?
Yeah.
They start gaining weight in college. It's very similar. I think that happens because they stop moving as much as they were moving when they were in high school. And then you have another tier of they're moving a little bit in college, but then they get out of college and they get a job and they move even less. And then I think that also causes more other issues of more stress, more weight,
Right.
things like that too. And I guess it's probably pretty stressful for a veteran to get out into the real world also.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think stress plays a big part of it, because we all know stress, belly fat, all that kind of stuff. But as well, you're also talking about if dudes retire. So I was 39 when I retired because I went in when I was 19. So if you do 20 years and get out, or any amount of time that you stayed in enough to retire, you're also, the time you're getting out is also an age where your metabolism starts to slow down and all. So you've got stress, you've got slowing metabolism. You're not, in the military, you have to work out, you have to maintain a certain level of fitness. Now you don't have to anymore. And so that self motivation and self discipline, I feel like a lot of people probably wake up and they go, I don't have to work out anymore. So they don't. But I think people's vision of working out too in the military, a lot of our workouts are based around, go hard till you drop kind of workouts. And you don't need that. And I don't think a lot of people understand that or know that. So that's something that I'd like to kind of introduce to guys, and things like you've had on your podcast, not just with Original Strength, but like Dan John's Easy Strength and things like that. I think would be valuable for the veteran community.
So you were in the military for 20 years. And you said it obviously it's very important to stay in shape while you're in the military. Can you like tell some stories? Like, how did your fitness level help you do jobs, or like how did it tie together for you?
Uh, yeah. So that's pretty broad, but I was an infantryman and I was in special operations doing a civil affairs job. Most of my jobs were pretty, when you're deployed anyway, and then in training, they're pretty physically demanding. So having a certain level of strength and cardio and all that basically means you don't die. Like, I mean, you can't you can't go to places like Afghanistan and carry 100-pound packs around and stuff without having a high level of fitness. Um, but it's physical ability as well as mental ability, and I think through your training, you have to have some hardship in there. You have to have a certain level of difficulty in there so that you do test yourself mentally as well, because you got to know how much you can do, how far you can go. um, but my training, looking back, my training was not great, but it worked. So I didn't have the knowledge that I have now, um, but I just wish I could go back in some cases. We did a lot of running, a lot of carrying rucksacks, ruck walking, road marching, however you want to phrase that, and push-ups, sit-ups. I have never been a gym guy. If you see me without my shirt on, that's kind of obvious. I'm not Jay Cutler or anything, so I've never been that guy. I've tried to be that guy. It just doesn't, my metabolism, the way I'm built, it just doesn't work for me. So a large amount of running, a little weights here and there, and then just function. I've always done functional workouts. Before CrossFit was a thing, we did CrossFit. We just called it circuit training. Things that elevate your heart rate and test you. And it just, I don't know, it translated. I usually had one of the fittest squads. So whatever we were doing, we're working. But to say I had a methodology would be lying, to put it
Right.
lightly.
Well, okay. So you mentioned this is interesting. You said you think you need to test yourself to know what you're capable of. Can you give some examples of that?
Yeah. So I've always been skinny guy, for lack of a better term. I've never been a big muscle guy. So for me, testing myself meant, we would do runs and stuff, and a lot of times we would stop and do things like buddy carries. We would do long runs, 4 or 5 mile runs, and just periodically stop and do stuff, run hill sprints or whatever in the middle of those runs, and do things like buddy carries, like I said. And I would pick the biggest guy, or one of the biggest guys, and I would carry him up the hill. And that was really twofold. That was a leadership thing, and it was a test thing, because I wanted to show guys like, all right, I'll pick up the biggest guy and go. So you need to have that same mentality. And I just always wanted to push myself harder, and test myself. It you inside your own head is where you can live or die. I mean, if you can't, I used to tell people, you could take Arnold Schwarzenegger, and just bear with me on the analogy because I know he's a mentally tough dude, but you could take a guy built like Arnold Schwarzenegger, and when it comes to doing something like a 12-mile road march in 3 hours, which is one of our big standards, you can have all that level of physical fitness in the world, but if you don't have the mental fitness, you're not going to make it, because it takes that to get through things like that. There's some tasks that go so far, it doesn't matter how in shape you are. If you're not mentally fit, you're not going to make it. If that
Well,
makes sense.
if you're not mentally fit, though, can you really be in shape? Like, because to me, the body is going to follow the mind. I mean, if the mind is lacking, the body's probably going to be lacking as well.
That's true. That's very true. I think some people, for some people, it just comes easier. The fitness part. I mean, we've all known those people that the fitness part comes easier. So I think that maybe hurts them in the mental department a little bit, because they don't have to try as hard, maybe. Um, but yeah, you just you have to be mentally fit. But you're right; it follows one another.
How did you mentioned something too that was pretty interesting, and I don't know if you can tie it together, but it sounded like that you were almost using fitness as leadership or as an example of leadership as well.
Absolutely. The military thing is to say lead from the front, that kind of thing. Set the example, lead by example. So yeah, you always, it's funny. So I learned, in original strength, breathing is one of the core things, right? It's
Right.
one of the main resets and everything. And that diaphragmatic breathing. I was doing diaphragmatic breathing after runs without knowing what I was doing really. But the reason why I was doing it is because I could calm my heart rate much faster. Because for me, and the guys that were in my, there's going to be some guys that were in my squad and have worked for me that are going to listen to this and they're going to laugh during this part. But it was always my goal to run everybody hard, and then at the end, I'm not dying, if that makes sense. I learned to control my breathing and change my breathing to a point where I could calm down and not be just bent over, dying, whatever, even though some of them were. It was always my goal to still be composed, which is also a kind of a facet of being in combat. You've got to be able to exert yourself physically, get to the objective, and still be able to uh, do the things tactically that you need to do without dying physically.
Have you seen, so speaking of tactically, have you seen people make judgment errors or just big, I guess, big mistakes because they weren't physically fit or because they could not manage their breathing in tough situations?
I have seen people have to get evacuated before they could even get to the objective because they were not in shape, or
Oh,
the or or not in the shape that they need to be, which included cardio, breathing, that kind of thing.
okay. So that brings me to my next question. Well, it's not a question really. Well, it is. So you and I wrote a book called Original Strength for the Tactical Athlete. Um, what, because now this is your world, what is a tactical athlete?
So a tactical athlete is someone that has to be able to be physically fit enough um, to accomplish an objective. That's not the way I wrote it in the book. I don't remember exactly what I wrote in the book, but uh, like I said, it's a person that is physically fit enough to accomplish tough tactical objectives without the physical strain overcoming them, if that makes sense.
Right. Okay. And I guess so. A tactical athlete is not just necessarily only in the military, but they could be a police officer, a firefighter, EMS, or anybody really that's using their body to serve others.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
so as a tactical athlete, or how? Okay, so because most listeners probably haven't read this book. What are some of the ways that you can train to become a better tactical athlete?
Well, so as I'm growing and learning stuff from you as well, and the original strength community, I'm learning there are, in the past, I would have trained to be a tactical athlete with a lot of workouts where at the end you're absolutely dead. You're leaving the sweat angel on the floor, that kind of stuff. But now what I'm learning more about training strength and everything is you don't need to do that. So I would take more approaches such as original strength resets, the things like are in the original strength for the tactical athlete book, crawling, dragging chains, all those kinds of things. I would take more lighter workouts where you still have something left in the bag at the end, but I would also, as long as I wasn't deployed on a mission, I would also have at least 1 to 2 workouts out a week where you are just physically exhausted at the end. Because again, I think you still need to regularly push yourself to a level that you're capable, and you can realize where your breaking point is. Um, I think you have to do that. You have to know where mentally uh, you're going to get to your breaking point, and then how do you get past that? What is going to trigger in your head to get past that?
Okay, so on that vein, what's the toughest mental challenge you've overcome, or you met, or that you pushed yourself with?
I I would say so. I'm gonna have two. I'm gonna start with just about any time in the mountains of Afghanistan, having to carry heavy packs, and my first trip to Afghanistan, which would have been 2003 ish, and us walking, and we did a lot of walking there, and the altitude was a factor, the weight was a factor, and you can't stop. There is no rest. You know, we rest at night in a patrol base, but when you're doing business during the day, and this wasn't even firefights necessarily. This is just walking, searching villages and whatnot. The second one would be the mile crawl.
The mile crawl.
Yeah, the
So
mile crawl.
what was hard about that? What was the mental challenge with that?
So let's back up a second. And the mile crawl comes from my good friend Tim Anderson doing the mile crawl twice. And I've always had this relationship with Tim, with you, that Tim's full time job became fitness. Mine was not, but I still wanted to keep up with Tim. It was a way to push myself and challenge myself. And I followed this crazy guy on the journey. And you did the mile crawl twice, and I thought surely I can do that. And then we had the idea for the book, and that came about, and I was like, man, I need to do that, and I think it would be a great experience for the book. And so part of the challenge in the mile crawl for me was that I did not finish my training. I was training for a certain amount of time, and I trained up to a half mile. The only thing I had done was a half mile without stopping, and beyond that, I had only done maybe 3/4 of a mile because I'd do a half mile, and then I'd do about another quarter of a mile, but I would have breaks in there. And the that crawl was so hard because my body or my brain, I'm looking at the ground, and for that amount of time, and my brain was just saying, "This sucks. Stand up." Like, just stand up. There were times in my training when I would stand up and shake it out, and I would be like, "Why did I just stand up? I don't know why I just stood up." But that was how powerful my brain was like, "Dude, don't do this, man. This is not fun. Don't do it." So mentally, that was it. It was a challenge. It was a challenge.
I get that. Yeah, that whole it's a long time to be crawling though. I mean, to be honest, that's and and
Yeah.
and time aside, there's such a difference between crawling for time and then crawling for distance. Like those are almost completely different worlds
Yes.
from my experience anyway. Um, because I had I was not prepared for how long a mile was when I the first time I did it. Because I only all I knew was time. I had not really measured distance before, so that was mentally a hurdle for me as well.
Yeah. It was a challenge, and to get into the faith thing a little bit, that was God was on my side because there's no other explanation. Because I used a phrase that I really like, and I said I'm going to let go and let God because I just wanted to get the mile crawl done with. I was so tired of training for it and everything. I was like, let's just get this done, and I wanted to get it done so I could experience it and write about it. And I just decided one night. I said I'd actually cracked my phone screen that night because the picture I took of my watch with the mile and everything to show the distance and time, I was with a cracked phone. And I just remember I said, you know what? I'm gonna get up in the morning. I'm gonna put my headphones on, and I'm just gonna let go and let God and just see what happens. And I'm gonna go for it. And I knew I was good because I just started crawling. I knew my route. I was just gonna go, and I went. And I looked at my watch, and I was at like I said in the book, I can't remember. I was like 0.67 or 0.76. Anyway, the first time I even looked at my watch to see the distance I was at, I was already further than I had ever crawled without stopping during my training.
Wow.
So I was like, you got me, God, let's do this.
Here's a silly question. Did your headphones work when you put them on?
Yeah, I know your story, and yeah, my headphones did work.
That's a whole other mental level right there.
Yeah, yeah, no kidding. Which so let's tie that back to the tactical athlete thing. When I was in the military and training, I see dudes training with headphones and stuff. I never wore headphones when I for this I did like as you know my last couple years I started wearing headphones when I would do some training. Um, but forever I never wore headphones because for me my mind was in combat. There's not going to be any music in my ears to help keep me motivated. So it's just got to be me, and it's just got to I've got to do it, and I can't rely on Metallica or whoever to pump me along for those challenges. So it's just got to be me in my own head, and so I wouldn't wear headphones. Later on, I started that, and I do now, but I'm kind of past that point too, where I don't the mental challenge for me. I don't really need it anymore, other than just making sure I still got it, because I've already been there.
Well, that's the interesting thing about pushing yourself like that is once you walk through the door and you have that knowledge that you've done it, everything after that is just easier. Like for instance, you could do something really hard after you've done it the first time, and you may not touch it again for a year, but you have that knowledge walking into it that, well, I've already done this once, and that does help you along as far as doing it again.
You have that knowledge, or you could say you have that perspective
Yeah, sure.
because
Well,
you know how difficult it is. And when you look at other stuff, you've got the perspective of this ain't that bad.
right. So, and that goes the whole that I know I got that saying like I just want to well one I want to feel good, so it feels good to feel good, but I also want to be able to make the hard things easy. But once you make the really hard thing, once you've done it, then the perspective does change where other stuff does just get easy.
Yeah. And that ties in that whole perspective thing that ties into veterans and why some veterans struggle in civilian life is because they have the guys that have and veterans are not better than anybody. Don't get me wrong here, like, but the struggles that a lot of veterans have gone through are more difficult than what most civilians will go through in some way. I got it, financial struggles, all that kind of stuff, but the struggles of combat and all the different things that come with that and deployments and whatnot, veterans just tend to have a perspective on things that is difficult sometimes for civilians to understand. The things that our civilian friends will complain about and all, we're just like, yeah, no big deal, because we have had other struggles. So that's just one of those things that guys deal with. But it just goes back to perspective.
Well, and I mean, that's almost everything, right? Because your perception's your reality. So, I
Right.
mean, it shapes so much. So after after you crawled the mile, did that change anything for you? Did Angel start singing, and did the rest of your life just did anything come from that?
Uh, yeah, I didn't want to crawl anymore. No,
Well,
no.
that's pretty much what
Not
came.
that I didn't,
That happened
not
to
that I
me.
didn't want to crawl anymore at all, but I definitely wanted a break after that. But no, it just nothing really changed. I mean, I knew, I already had faith in everything, but it just showed me, man. It was like, dude, walk by faith, let go and let God, and it'll work out. It's, you can't explain. That's a And we've talked about this offline, not on here, but how there's other people that have tried the mile crawl, and we think maybe one or two people have done it, maybe, but
Maybe.
there's other people that have tried it and not been able to do it. And me anyway, I don't think there's anything special about me. And I did it with ease. So it's not like I don't know. In my mind, it's not this amazing feat. To some people, it is, I guess, but uh, you really faith played big in that, man. I believe it. I believe it did.
So, just to give everybody, if you're listening, perspective, when we talk, I know a mile's a long ways. I mean, because it's a mile, 5,280 feet. So, but when we're talking about crawling a mile, we're talking about a specific way of crawling. So it's on your hands and feet with your butt down below your head. And what that does is it makes all your muscles in your center always on the hook. There's no escape from it. And we're also talking about not stopping. So once you start, your knees stay off the ground until the mile is crawled. So that in itself, and I don't know if you've ever done that, but even doing that for 1 minute for most people that's a good job. But it takes much more than 1 minute to crawl a mile. How long did it take you to crawl your mile?
Uh, I think we were both in the 40s. I think mine was 45, 48, somewhere in there.
Oh, that's really good. That's phenomenal. Yeah, my very first time I was like 53, and then the second time was 44. Um, the first time was just testing the water, so I really didn't want to do it again though, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I didn't either. Because I actually, of course, I wanted to beat your time. Uh, and I did
Almost.
not. I did not. But I was like, once I was in, kind of the fact that I went for it without fully training for it, or what I felt like was fully training for it, uh, you know, I was like, the time is what it is. Like, the goal is the mile, and the time is what it is. Just finish.
And even if it took 2 hours, it's amazing. It's a miracle.
Yeah, no, I have like you said, hands and feet, butt down, uh, and not stopping at all. Uh, the caveat being in original strength, we usually teach keeping your head up. Um, I did not keep my head up the whole time. Uh, to have your neck in flexion for that amount of time and yeah, the head was not up, but the butt was below the head. I will say that because I felt every bit of that.
the that little appendage on the end of your neck, or your neck, yeah, it gets heavy.
Yeah,
You're,
yeah.
after 10 minutes, it's on. It's heavy. It's like crawling around with a watermelon on top of your neck there. Um, so I want to ask you this too, because we were talking about the tactical athlete book. You did some really pretty cool. I thought it was fascinating trials in that book where you would take original strength or pressing reset out onto the firing range. Um, and
Yeah.
you were trying to like test your what were you testing your accuracy, reaction time, all of that? What were you doing with that?
So that's something that I've thought about. If I was to rewrite the book today, that part would be different, and I would probably take more time with it and get more data. But basically, um, what I was doing was taking the resets and doing them on the range. So I would do some cross crawls, some breathing, all those sorts of things, and waking my body up. And I think that's really all it was. Basically, the test that I did for those listening was kind of went out and I shot a drill. I did some resets, shot the drill again, and my times were better. Um, I think really it was just a matter of the resets waking my body up, waking my brain up, all those kinds of things. But that applies too. I'm not trying to downplay the valuableness of it, but yeah, that's kind of what that was.
I mean, I thought it was neat because you were doing things like drawing dots on your gloves, and I,
Yeah. So when I would so the dots on the glove thing was when I was crawling, I was tracking the dots and I was trying to um, kind of train. It was a hand-eye coordination thing, and I was trying to see, would that help? Could I see a market improvement in shot presentation, things like that? And I did, very unscientific. So could I sit here and say, yeah, that was the absolute cause that I got faster or more accurate or whatever? I can't say that really. But in a non-very or a non-scientific experiment, it worked for me.
right on. So for taking the lid off, how are you working to put together like how are you helping veterans? Like, are you helping? Like, are you putting exercise programs together? Are you putting leadership programs together for them? What are you doing with that?
I haven't. I haven't gone that far yet with any programs. Um, from the fitness perspective, kind of like I said earlier, I want to bring veterans a different take on fitness. Fitness, I think, is kind of my goal. Um, to be honest, and it's not an insult, but a lot of military guys get their workouts out of Muscle and Fitness magazines. You know what I mean? We're still doing bench presses. We're worried about how heavy our squat is. All those kinds of things. And those are not bad things, but the other side of that is, we put a lot of abuse on our bodies, and some of that stuff is just not good for you. Along with the other things that we do, like I jumped out of airplanes for 20 years, and that put a lot of abuse on my body. So there's certain things, like we've had conversations. I can't do deadlift workouts. I can do deadlifts, can't do deadlift workouts. Just that constant hinging motion and heavy weights are not good for me. And I'm just one of hundreds of thousands of veterans that are in that same boat. And so I want to bring a methodology of working out to folks that is going to keep them strong, keep them in shape, keep them able, most importantly, uh, but not be hard. So things like the original strength resets. I don't know if you want to go into what those are or not for my listeners as well. But actually, yeah, I want you to just give us a little rundown of the resets for my listeners, Tim.
So the resets are just really they're movements that are in everybody's nervous system. And everybody has done these movements before when they were children. We all are born with a developmental sequence that pretty much ties our bodies together as we develop. So it's a series of reflexes and movements and movement patterns that we grow and develop through. Well, even if you're 99 years old, you still have the same nervous system you were born with, and you still have those patterns inside that nervous system. So when we say pressing reset, all we're talking about is revisiting those movement patterns. And it might be as simple as crawling on your hands and knees, learning how to breathe with your diaphragm, learning how to move your eyes and your head as they're designed to be moved. And all those movements do is they strengthen your nervous system, and they tell your nervous system that they give your nervous system good information about what your body's doing and where everything's at. It reminds your brain where of those patterns and what muscles are supposed to be doing what, but it also makes your nervous system feel safe so that it will allow you to move. And in doing so, it improves mobility, range of motion, which is mobility, strength, speed, power, balance. Basically, if we move the way we're designed, our body actually will allow us to live a good, healthy, and strong life. And that's the design.
Yeah. So for my listeners, that's your general original strength rundown, and we'll go over here towards the end and I'll put in the show notes how to get more information on original strength. But you and I have had these conversations. It's just original strength and this is why we wrote the book, was trying to sell a program like original strength to a tactical, military, whatever the case, basically alpha male community that is set on things like a bench press and whatnot, versus the mobility side of things and things that can really make them strong. It's just not sexy. Crawling is not sexy, for lack of a better term. And so getting guys to take hold to something like original strength that at times can be difficult depending on their mindset and their knowledge towards fitness.
No, I agree. And well, and it's just a culture of fitness. And there's waves of it, but like most guys that I know, and they're between what 40 to 70, all they know is bodybuilding type stuff. I mean, that's what has been it's
Right.
been glamorized. It's been, that's what's made fun and exciting. But I I just think there's a better way. There's a better design. Like I don't know that we're designed to be doing bench press, but I do know that we're designed to walk, to throw, to get up off the ground, to run, and to climb and do stuff like that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I've been doing the original strength stuff obviously for years and years. I was doing it. I think you sent me a video of cross crawls back in like 2010. I think I was in Kuwait having back issues maybe or something, and you sent me a video. You were trying to explain to me, here, do this, and I was like, what? And so you sent me a quick video, And so yeah, I've been doing this stuff way back since before it was original strength, and it's benefited me, guys. I mean, it's I've got joint issues out the wazoo. I've got a disability rating for about every joint in my major joint in my body from the VA, and that doesn't come from me just making stuff up. That's X-rays and whatnot. So I've got some issues. But I think original strength has really allowed me to continue to do what I do and to continue to do the kind of workouts I want, to continue to kind of live the kind of life I want to live. Um, you know, I it just pays dividends, but it's getting it to the people that need it. And so to go back to your question, yeah, this is the kind of stuff. And then things like I mentioned, like Dan John's easy strength. We're talking about 5 exercises, 10 reps, 2 sets of 5, that kind of thing. Guys look at that, or folks look at that normally, and they're like, "What? Like that's not a workout," but it is, and it
So
works.
yeah, it does work, and so you don't have to tear the body down to keep it strong. Matter of fact, if you always tear the body down, you'll probably weaken it. But if it's almost like economics. If you give it just enough, you have good results. But too much of a good thing, you have diminishing margin of returns, and then the results go the other way or the way you don't want them to. But being strong and healthy does not have to be hard.
Right. The caveat here coming from me, if you're listening to my fitness advice or my workout advice, is that I'm not going to give you anything that is going to be aesthetically driven. So I'm not going to give you anything that's going to help make your bis and tris bigger, your chest bigger, your abs show, which is nutrition more than working out anyway. But I'm not. That's not the way I roll, and I haven't rolled that way since I was like my low 20s. My goal with fitness has never been uh, looks. It's really been more based on your career and life. What do you need to be able to do to be good at your job, and what you need to be able to do to live.
I,
So, just saying.
no, that's really what fitness is, though. It's allowing you to live the life that you're supposed to live and want to live. It's not necessarily about big. If you want big muscles, great, but that doesn't mean you're necessarily fit. That just means it can, for some people, can mean they just have big muscles. But it doesn't help them check the mailbox any easier than it does for somebody that's just tied together really well that maybe doesn't have big muscles.
Yeah. So, Tim, I feel like we're being too serious on this.
Okay,
Tim and I are not normally serious for very long. We do have some very serious conversations. We do.
sure,
But I feel like we're being a little too serious here. So I'm gonna reroute us if that's all right a little bit.
sure. I'm,
I'm
I'm
making
afraid.
I'm
I'm a
making
little
you
scared.
nervous right now, aren't I?
I am nervous. I'm nervous.
Okay. So Tim and I met many moons ago. It was I can't remember what year it was, but I went and did the whole battling ropes certification with John Brookfield, and there was all these kettlebell people there, and that was the main reason I went to this battle rope certification was because John had told me he was going to have a bunch of kettlebell people there, and I wanted to learn more about kettlebells, mainly because I was going to a CrossFit gym at that time, and I was beating the crap out of myself doing snatches with kettlebells, and nobody could teach me how to do them properly. So I wanted to meet some folks, and I went there and I met Tim. I think it was really just a matter of Tim was the closest to me being able to go to and train. Tim and I trained kettlebells for, I don't know, several years, I think, a few years. Original Strength comes along. So I've known Tim for a good bit. And we've kept in touch pretty regular throughout the time, I would say. Tim Tim's a bit of a superhero fan. See his mug? I think he did that on purpose.
Actually,
Um,
no.
your little weird blur thing that you like is kind of hiding the mug, but he's got a Superman mug there. And if you notice, he's wearing some glasses to make himself look like Clark Kent.
Sorry.
Um, and he will say that you've never seen him and Superman in the same room. But anyway, so Tim, let's hear about your superhero affinity. Why are you so into superheroes?
Because that's a hard question, but I mean, I love them because we're all I've always been drawn to them since I was 3 years old. Always running. You remember underoos? Did you ever have underoos, Chad? The little underwear and the t-shirt?
I I'm pretty sure I probably did. I definitely have some He-Man sheets upstairs right now that I still have.
Oh, He-Man, that's vintage. But so yeah, but from the time I was 3 or 4 years old, I've always wanted to be Superman. And once in a while, I had the little, I like Batman, but I went through a phase. But I always resonated with Superman. And I realized, in my mid to late 30s that I still wanted to be Superman. There was obviously something wrong with me. Um, and so, but now I've just realized that no, I'm supposed to want to be Superman, and all of us are. Like I think we were all created to be supernatural and not just live ordinary lives. But that's why all of our stories are so. I mean, all of our stories. Look at the most popular movies that are out today. Look at and in Star Wars and the Lord of the Rings, and I mean all those wonderful stories. They're all about heroes, but they're really all about us. Does that answer your question? I like superheroes because I like people like me. Is that it?
So are you saying you're a superhero, Tim?
Well, I am saying that yes, I have come to honestly, sure, because I believe that's what I'm supposed to be. Yeah. If I'm following the
I
example that has been given to me throughout the centuries, yes, I am a superhero.
well, I just want to say, since we're 3 days away from Valentine's Day, I'd just like to tell you that you're my superhero.
Oh, that's sweet, Chad.
You're
See,
welcome.
you'd always have that hard exterior, but on the inside, you're like a gummy bear. It's great.
You know, man. You know me. Yeah. No, I get what you're saying, and you could really take. You and I talk a lot about the Marvel universe and those characters because those movies are just awesome. I'm a big superhero fan as well, people. Um, but I think we can draw so much from those characters and see a lot of them in ourselves. And it doesn't mean you're shooting lasers out of your eyes or you're going to fly or anything like that. But I mean, just the character traits, I think, are
Yeah.
kind of some of the bigger things.
So the desire to help someone, or the desire to make a wrong right, or to make somebody's day better, to pick somebody up when they've fallen. I mean, all of those things, those are superhero characteristics for sure.
Yeah. So like we're talking with fitness and the mental fitness piece, you look at like the latest Spider-Man series, I guess, the first of the latest Spider-Man, was it Homecoming? Was that what it was
Yes.
called? And scene towards the end where that building collapses on him when he's a dude. I don't remember what the bad dude's name was. But he's fighting that guy and he essentially collapses the building on him and he's sitting there and he's trying to push up out from under this rubble and he really has to gather himself and believe that he can do it. I mean, there's a lot of lessons there. Um, well, to back up, when Tony Stark comes to him and he's going to take the suit away from him and Spider-Man says, "I'm nothing without the suit." And Tony says, "Well, if you're nothing without the suit, then you don't deserve it."
That's right.
That's
That's what's on
huge,
the
man.
inside, man. There are so many lessons. Like I could talk all day about this. Like to me, like the movie Winter Soldier, full of lessons.
Yes. Civil War, full of lessons.
Yeah,
The
absolutely.
movie Captain America Civil War.
Yes, that was a great movie, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah, not the old Civil War. Yeah. So there's a lot of lessons there. I think that there's a ton to draw from there. But yeah, I wanted to hear your Superman or superhero explanation. And Tim may or may not have a superhero tattoo on his body.
Yeah, but so the thing with that is, I told you I realized in my 30s that there's obviously something wrong with me. But even my wife says, like, man, if you like Superman that much, why don't you just go ahead and get a tattoo? I mean, I was in my 30s. Here's a cool story. At my 30s, I thought I knew that if I got the tattoo, that how tattoos age as you age, and they don't always look as good as when you first got them, like 50 years later.
Right.
Um, and you see some people like, oh man, you really should have thought about that tattoo because it doesn't look like it just because the people's bodies change in the sun and all the time. Time happens to the tattoo. So I thought, you know what? I want the Superman symbol, but I want to get it. I'll do it instead of steel. I'll do it in stone, where it has cracks and like weathering on it, so that it looks like it has aged
Mhm.
as I age. Well, what I did not anticipate is that my Superman stone tattoo would turn into steel. All those cracks and everything have gone away, and it looks like a polished S. So I was like, well, how about that? So it corrected my thinking, actually, is what happened.
Yeah, I don't have any tattoos, so I'm kind of I'm the oddity as a veteran. I don't have all the tattoos like a lot of guys. I don't feel the need to wear a beard around and show my tattoos and whatnot to make people think I was some kind of tactical operator or whatever the case may be. So I'll probably get some hate for that one.
Well, no, and I mean, I only show my tattoo if there's a cat stuck in a tree. I don't, I don't like pull it out for everybody. So
I
it's
get you. I get you. Every now and then you gotta come out of the phone booth, right?
that's right. What's the phone booth? What are those?
That's true. That's true. We just dated ourselves talking about a phone booth, I think.
Yeah, now if you're coming out of anything, it's right here.
Yeah, no kidding. So what else we got, Tim?
I got a question for you because you're talking about deadlifting. If you could pick three exercises, weight exercises that you thought would like be the most helpful to a veteran or anybody listening, really, what would those be?
So the king would be the Turkish get up.
Okay.
Turkish get up, whatever you want to call it. Simply laying down flat on the floor and getting up to standing and repeating over and over. And that is either with a kettlebell, with a sandbag, with nothing. Um, it's valuable. I've done it. I mean, you and I both have done it a multitude of ways. And I think to me, the Turkish get up is kind of king for that. And we talked about that a little bit. Like, I think, uh, as you get older and people get scared of getting down on the floor and all that, especially as you way up in age, I think if you continue to do things like that, you're never going to get there. You're never going to get to that point where you're scared to get up and down. Um, so it would be Turkish get up. Um, I would say just walking, uh, and in the same manner, walking with nothing or walking with weight, carrying weight, that kind of thing, I think is also very valuable if you're doing your diaphragmatic breathing and all that kind of stuff. I think.
Got a third one? Those are
And
strong. Those
the third one is kind of hard to say. I want to lean towards something like a pull up. Just because in the same manner that you're getting up off the ground and you're just walking, I also think you need to be able to pull yourself up and have that pulling strength.
I can see
Would
that. I I talked with Alex Salkin about this, about hanging and doing pull-ups and stuff like that. I do think so. The reason, well, the number one fear of people as they get older is falling because if they fall, either they hurt something, they break something, or they can't get up. But like you said, if you're comfortable getting up on, up and down from the floor, that's not an issue because the body, if you invest in it, it'll give you a good return. But gravity is one of those things where we don't just push against it, but we can pull away from it. So having the ability to also pull yourself up from the ground if you had to, that would
yes.
be that would be priceless. To
Yeah.
have options, because the more options we have, the better off we are. So if we can push ourselves up from the ground, great. If we can pull ourselves up from the ground, great. And I do think those are very good combinations for sure.
Yeah, and those exercises too for people to understand, like the get up. In the original, something I've learned from original strength and just the people in the original strength community is how you can vary exercises, how you can take a something like a get up and change it to fit whatever you need. So get ups, do them without your arms. Just get up off the ground without using your arms, which may be difficult for somebody. And if that is too difficult for you, okay, start where you are and go where you can. But pull-ups, do them slower, do them weighted, you know, do them off the floor. Find a low something that you can pull up onto. That's a pull-up. Uh, you know, all those different variations that you can do to make something either easier or more difficult, or an original strength, what we call your progressions and regressions. And you can just vary those exercises so much to make them so valuable. Versus, people tend to think a pull up, oh well, I just grab a bar and I pull up. Break it down more than that.
Well, yeah, and it doesn't have to be like, I mean, if like, because we all have different abilities, and pulling your own body weight up in the air and like doing a chin up or a pull up, that takes an appreciable amount of strength. And if you haven't done that in 30 years, that might seem like a pipe dream. But just pulling in general, like you said, you can maybe even keep your feet on the floor or hang, where it's like half your body weight. But just getting used to pulling is invaluable, because pulling is one of those human movements that we do less and less and less of, because of just our society, our technology, and the way things have gone. But it's still a very valuable human movement, and we should probably spend a lot more time pulling than we do.
Yeah, technology is a killer of movement.
It
I mean,
is. I
it,
mean,
it,
it's
it
got its
absolutely is.
blessings, but it's also got its curses with it as well, for sure.
Yeah, it's like we talk about, or what I've talked about when teaching original strength is talking about how we move less. One of the main things that I bring up that most everybody can relate to. If you've got any kind of modern vehicle, you've got a backup camera, so you don't even have to do this. So you don't even move your neck as much. So the things like the resets in original strength, where you're doing your neck nods, your neck control stuff. I mean, that's huge because we just, like I said, technology is a movement killer, and we just don't move as much.
No, and listen, I know I've written several articles about technology taking away our movement patterns and stuff, but dude, I love technology. I think it's fantastic. I wouldn't trade it. I just
Oh
think
yeah,
we need to be mindful of how we're actually designed to be, though, so that we can enjoy. If we move the way we're supposed to, we could enjoy technology even better. So that's all I'm
yeah,
saying.
yeah. Oh, don't get me wrong. I love the fact that I don't have to get up and go get the remote because I've got an Apple TV. I can just use my iPhone and pull the remote up on it, and I can change the channel or whatever, man. Don't get me wrong. When I say it's a killer, oh, I'm part of the problem. But but that is why I believe in things like original strength and all, and the movement systems that are out there. Obviously, we want you to do original strength, but I think that's why a lot of mobility and movement systems are becoming more popular. We're seeing the need for it, and we start to move less.
Well, like ever since the movie Wally came out, and Disney's always ahead of its time. But I mean, the need to move more and more is growing day by day. But that's a it's a choice, right? So I mean, we can choose to not move, and enjoy the fruits of technology, or we can choose to move and be so much better off.
So, um, so let's get back to we'll just kind of work on closing out then, if you're ready for that. I think we're sitting at about an hour here,
Yeah,
um,
that's cool.
or not an hour, so we a little under an hour. So I want to go back to and kind of talk about. So you've got the original Strength podcast, and I want my listeners to understand that. Look, the fitness things that we've talked about, and I want to bring to veterans. I'd love for you to go over and go check out Tim's original Strength. But it's on iTunes. It's considered original Strength podcast, right?
I think so. Yeah,
Yeah.
you should be able to search that, and it would pop up for sure.
Yeah. So if you look original Strength, you're going to find it, or you'll find a bunch of interviews with Tim. I would encourage my folks to go and take a look, listen, hear about the original strength resets, hear about pressing reset, the movement portion of it. That's what I want to bring to the veteran community, and it's on YouTube as well. Obviously, we're filming here today also, so you're gonna find all this on YouTube. But go check it out. It's out of the box. It's not as sexy as the stuff you've seen before, but just trust me, it works. Have some faith and go check it out. And as well, get on Amazon, look up Tim Anderson, look up Original Strength, and you'll find the Pressing Reset books there. You'll find the multitude of other books. Original Strength Performance is another great book as well It kind of gets more into the area of what tactical athlete type folks will enjoy, as well as Original Strength for the Tactical Athlete that Tim and I wrote. But go check that stuff out and do yourself a favor and learn more about the mobility and the Original Strength resets.
Awesome, man. I appreciate it. And guys, too, if you are in the military or you know someone that's in the military and getting out, and also if you're EMS, fire, police, also check out. I think they could benefit too, especially from the OS tactical athlete standpoint, but also from the leadership information that you give out as well.
Yeah, so I'm hoping to get entrepreneurs, CEOs, whoever that's interested in leadership stuff. There's starting to be more veterans getting into the leadership space. So helping them understand, like, look, guys like myself, a lot of folks out there, I became a leader at the age like 21 and was a leader in some capacity throughout the rest of my career. So, I've really got now going on, maybe 20 years of leadership experience. So and it all translate. Leadership is leadership, and it's taking care of people, serving leadership. All those things translate to the civilian space. Um, so I'd love for folks to share and go back for a second and name real quick. So I have an introduction episode. If you want to go back and listen to that, you can. But real quick on the name, I've been wanting to do a podcast for a while, and I didn't know what the name was going to be, and I was kind of waiting for it to be brought to me, just having a little faith that it would come to me. And it was kind of funny. I'm sitting in the theater watching Rambo: Last Blood, and there's a point on there where he's kind of mentoring his niece, and she wants to go down to Mexico and visit this friend who is not the best person ever as far as he remembers. And the niece tries to say she's changed. Rambo says people don't change, and she says, "Well, I've heard the stories about you, John Rambo, and I know that you changed." And he said, "No, I didn't change. I'm just trying to keep a lid on it every day." And when I heard that, it just hit. It just hit, and I knew. And so obviously, I wasn't going to call the podcast "Keeping a Lid on It." So for the theme of the podcast and everything, we're taking the lid off. And that's kind of the what, because it's very relatable for guys like myself and veterans, keeping the lid on it. Not to say we're psycho, we don't all have PTSD, not that kind of thing. It's just a keeping the lid on it. And taking the lid off is what the podcast is going to be about, and talking about some of the veteran issues and different things and our experiences in leadership and all those things.
So I will also have that included in the notes for the podcast listeners as well. Hey, Chad, thank you for agreeing to do the simulcast. This was good. It was fun.
It was good. We got to do it again, man, because I think we've got more to talk about. So we'll do it again. We start off too serious, man. We gotta lighten it up next time.
But if they knew the real us and how we actually banter back and forth, that's where the show's at. That's the real show.
we gotta capture that.
All right,
we gotta capture that. We'll work on it. We'll
do it. All right, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. We will see you next time.
Thanks, folks. See ya.
We hope you've enjoyed this edition of the Original Strength Podcast. If you made it this far, thank you so much.